Might be the track meet. We have Football in Focus from Teed Up Indoors on Battleground Avenue, back for another week, Thursday night, talking football. Bryant Roche from the News and Record with us tonight. Probably the big question we've already talked about a little bit before we started talking here. I tried to find you in the paper, trying to locate you. Where were you at last week? I think you might have been at 2 locations, 2 days last week.
Yeah, so, we had a couple Thursday games last week. I was over at Mount Tabor at Page on Thursday night, and then Friday night went over AC Reynolds at East Forsyth. So we got a nice little twofer in last week with a couple Thursday matchups, and gave us the opportunity to see more games, all the merrier, right?
And I saw Skip Foreman. I think I looked today at the paper somewhere. He had a little bit of video from Grimsley's game last week. Saw a couple plays there, a couple of key plays going on.
He did. He went out to Grimsley against Reagan, which was at Reagan. So he went out there and got some shots for us, and we try to do what we can with our staff, try to get around a little bit. So, he was over there while I was over at the Nest, as they call it.
What about going back to the over toward Marion Kirby Stadium? I like to call the gym there the MAC, the football stadium, Marion Kirby. The Curb, we call that the Curb over at Page. Call it the Curb for Kirby. But going back to Page in that game, I know Page was beaten pretty soundly, but what about Maurice Andrews? I know he made your list of players, top games last week, made the list. So what about Andrews and his running job? I guess that was pretty much what Page had to go with last week.
Yeah, he's right now the team is 0-3, but he's really a bright spot. He's a nice bruiser of a back, about 220, got some power in him. He ran for a touchdown up the middle, when the game was still not, decided yet. Page hung in there early, but I would say a punt that went through the end zone for a safety off the goal post, and then a fumble at midfield, and eventually a pick six for 101 yards the other way for Tabor. Those things just, he is a bright spot for a football team that, has some cleaning up to do, but also has faced a pretty tough schedule. 3 teams that are in our top 5 right now.
And I would say for him, probably the key to him is carries. He's going to be carrying that ball a lot this season. Average a lot of carries per game. Probably got to be very durable to last through this coming season he's going to be facing.
Yeah, I think he's their bell cow.
Yeah.
The thing about them is that they can't get behind like they have been. If they can build a lead and rely on him to, control the clock and control the pace. I think with Robertson, that's kind of been his MO as a coach
sure
anyway.
Has, yeah, you go back to a guy like Trevon Hester, who was there a couple of years ago. Saw him on TV for Winston State, pinned up a touchdown. So he definitely was one of those backs that Coach Robertson used like that.
He likes to build a power running game. He likes to set the tone. But when you look at their schedule, they played Dudley, Reidsville, and Tabor. That's a tough
I know they're
slate
saying
they
they probably
there.
can't wait to get to those conference games now. They love to get to the Metro 40 conference games right now, I'm sure. And that week will probably help them off, too. That off week probably help Page get prepared for that first conference game, get lined up for that.
Get a little recoup. But I talked to Robertson, and he said, he doesn't like to shy away from the tough non-conference. So
he beat Reidsville last year, right? Got that big win
they
last
did.
year.
They did beat Reidsville last year. They did. Didn't fare as well this year, but
Right.
but hey, he's not afraid to schedule tough opponents, and you got to like that as well.
We got Grimsley winning big, Dudley winning big at Durham Hillside last week. Dudley point differential in their wins, growing upward over 3 games, big differential. It's kind of a shame, though, there's not going to be any kind of Grimsley-Dudley game because there are 2 different levels of competition, 3A versus 4A. But the fans, the game they would like to see in this town, I'm sure this year, would be Grimsley versus Dudley. Would make for a nice matchup.
That would be a fun deal. Maybe they can work that out in the non-conference one of these days. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, those are Those are the top two teams in Greensboro.
No
I mean,
doubt
you
it.
can't really dispute
And the
that.
fun thing about that is, too, since there will be no game, it's just going to be a continual comparison between who's better than who, and the fans just rattling back and forth between the two schools and the two fan bases. They can just keep talking all they want because that's all they're going to be able to do this year with that.
Well, you know what they say. I mean, when it comes to talking about history and whatever, the best debates are hypotheticals that we
You
can't.
did. I got that on my paper. I got that word hypothetical on my sheet because what I'm thinking about doing on the website, maybe posting maybe not this week, well, sometime maybe late in the weekend, the Grimsley-Dudley game. Who wins that game? See what people say about that. So that might cause some good discussion.
Have a nice little fan poll or something.
Yeah, something like that. Fan poll. Yeah, who wins that game between Grimsley and Dudley? Yeah, because it'd be a nice little process. Let people talk it out, see what they say about it. I know it would not be nice very long. It would probably get pretty heated after a while. I'm sure the discussion will get very deep as time goes on. Die-hard Dudley fans and Grimsley now it's starting to be more die-hard fans. More die-hard fans there now too than there were in the past since they've improved that program so much.
Okay, yeah, no, I can't speak for the fan base being my first year here.
Right.
You know, I've only seen it
But
this
you're starting
year.
to feel a little bit already, I'm sure. You're feeling some of it. It's coming your way. You're
So, I
feeling
mean,
it.
I can't speak for what it was in the past, but I do know that Coach Brown really did take a program that was not, you know, where it is now. Definitely built that program during his tenure.
Yeah, and his man Alonzo Barnett II doing pretty good for James Madison, I understand, playing some up there and doing well. Starting at quarterback, I think, for the Dukes. That's not bad either, the job he's doing. He's sending guys to college, and also another kid, too, did well last week for them also, and their former Grimsley players. And then we're going to be seeing he's also a quarterback. I mean, they're just doing well and doing well continually. Grimsley, Dudley, Eastern Guilford Northwest. Who else is in the mix for the top-tier teams among the Guilford County schools? I said Grimsley, Dudley, Eastern Guilford Northwest. Who else you put in that top-tier mix right now? Anybody else even close those groups there?
I think, honestly, it's pretty clear that Grimsley and Dudley are at the top. In my recent area rankings, I have Northwest kind of toward the bottom of that top 10. As far as I'm concerned, the conference championship is going to be played in a couple weeks between Grimsley and Northwest. I hate to say that this early, but just being honest with you,
legit, yeah,
those are the two best teams in the metro.
And it could come down to Eastern Guilford and Dudley in the other conference there later on as time goes on.
No, it's hard to disagree with that. It really is. Eastern.
And each year, all you're doing right now is it's like a measuring stick right now for the teams, Northwest and Eastern Guilford. Northwest versus Grimsley and Eastern Guilford versus Dudley. How close are you getting as each year goes on? Are you getting closer to knocking that top team off? That's kind of their objective to get them. How close are you getting each year?
No, you mentioned Eastern in there. I've been pretty high on Eastern really since the preseason. Probably higher than most people, but I've had them consistently ranked number 6 in my rankings.
And the best thing about them is you got this kid, Javon Cole, who's going to be the replacement back this year. But this other kid, Caleb Creech, comes in. He's got the ball, and he took over. You like that?
Yeah, no, I think the last time you had me on, I said what I really like about Eastern is that they can beat you in different ways. And I always like a team that can win in different ways. The first week, you know, it was through the air. The next week.
And before you go any further, I got to get this guy's name out there because he's among the top tier receivers. Now, you got the 3 big ones or 4 big ones over at Dudley, got the 2 big ones at Grimsley, but Stephen Murray is in that mix. He might be right edging closer to the top 2 or 3. Stephen Murray, Eastern Guilford, outstanding.
No, Stephen Murray's a legitimate player. I got to look at the stats again, but he's averaging over 20 yards a catch for them. So the first week he really went off. I think it was 181 receiving yards. The numbers cooled down a little bit week 2, but still very good. Part of that was because of the running game, because they were running the ball so well. They didn't need him. But he's electric. When you put the ball in his hands, and he's definitely a guy we're going to be watching this week against Western Alamance.
Another guy, too, gets lost in the mix is that quarterback. Jackson Jones has really taken over and done a good job running that team at quarterback.
Yeah, you know, I guess, you know, entering the season, you know, that was kind of the, you know, I don't know if I want to say question mark, but he really delivered week 1. Like I said, week 2, they just didn't need him as much. The numbers went down. They were running the ball. I think with their brand of football, they might even say that they prefer that power running game But Coach Baghamary, I mean, he's got a lot of cards to play with, and like I said, they can beat you in a bunch of different ways. And one of the reasons why I really like that football team.
And where will you be this week? Are you going to be involved Western Alamance, Eastern Guilford, or another game? Where are you going to be this week?
I will be at Eastern Guilford. Western Alamance comes to town. They played Reedsville really tight. Reedsville had to have a game-winning touchdown to beat them week 1. So I'm interested to see, what that game looks like. That's the only time that Western Alamance has lost was on a game-winning touchdown to Reedsville, and people around here know how good Reedsville is.
It's going to be a great night for Eastern Guilford to find out where they stand right now, too, against tough competition like Western Alamance. And another big game this week in that direction, a little bit further down the road, down Highway 70, getting further closer into Burlington, that direction, more toward Mebane, you might say. Reedsville, Eastern Alamance, big game.
You're making your way around, and that's two undefeated football teams, and we'll see kind of what happens there, but for Reedsville, they've taken care of business. Like I said, the tight one over Western Alamance. They played Page, took care of them. Rockingham County, they gave them a fight early, kind of split apart. At the end of the day, when those moments happen for Reedsville, you got to look for Kendry Harrison,
right,
that big old tight end.
Had a big week last week. You put his numbers on your page at News and Record on the front page for the results, and he had some big numbers last week.
I think he has big numbers every week.
Yeah, he's big enough. He's big enough to do big on offense and defense every week.
I think he has big numbers every week. Yeah. Kendry Harrison out of Reedsville, and there's a reason why some of the best college programs in the country have.
And the kid's only a sophomore, right? 10th grader.
Yeah, he's only a sophomore, folks, and he's also a heck of a basketball player.
He may be better at basketball than football. That's kind of scary thinking about that.
He was the first team all-area basketball player as a freshman this past year on a team that, made it to the state final. So he's something else.
What about Deontay Neal? Has he been injured for Reedsville? Has he been out? Because I haven't heard much about Neal yet this year. A little smaller guy.
Yeah, haven't heard as much about him. Don't know for sure everything about why his numbers might be down a little bit. You figure a guy that led the state in interceptions last year.
As a freshman.
You almost think, well, that's probably not going to happen because people aren't going to throw to him.
Yeah.
Because you kind of know about him, so you're not gonna throw it this way. But we'll see what happens. He's always a gadget. He's always there for a play. So we'll see what happens with Reedsville. They got a good quarterback, really a solid team. Reedsville, just one of those teams. They look pretty good, and their conference. I mean. It could be an interesting conference, but I think everyone thinks that Reedsville at the top is, clearly the team to beat.
What about this? It's mid-season, getting closer to it. Got about 4 games in for some teams after this week. Are you going to have like a mid-season report card coming out? Can we expect one of those? Because in school, they usually have like after the 9 weeks, you get a report card, and I guess 4.5 weeks in, you get that midterm progress report. You got something like that coming up soon we can look out for?
Well, we've got our power rankings every week.
Right. Been following those, yeah.
So, we'll have those every week. Might have some features rolling as well. Just kind of interesting stuff happening, as our season plays out. We're obviously covering the other sports too. We've had some volleyball, we've had some tennis, some cross country. So it's always busy, you know that, Mr. Durham.
What about this? So kind of on the same subject of football, but kind of a question of the week in some ways. How big is the Deion Sanders effect on football and college football in general right now? How big is that Deion Sanders effect? It's got to be huge right now. Got to be huge.
I think Deion Sanders, it's one of those things where in terms of the modern landscape of college football, in terms of getting transfers, in terms of overhauling a roster, I think he's basically showing, what you can do if you're a big name, because when you have a guy who's one of the greatest players of all time, and you have a brand like he has, it's easier for him to convince people to, hey, come play for me. You know what I'm saying? You get a guy like Travis Hunter, who was in Collins Hill, Georgia, uh, you know, committed to Florida State, but he went to Jackson State instead. So when you have the number one recruit in America wanting to play for you no matter where you're coaching, I think that helps. And his son's pretty good too.
Is he the hottest thing in football right now? College, pro, high school, whatever. Is Deion the hottest thing going on right now, you think?
You know what? It's hard to argue. I think his story it's gained a lot of following, and Colorado is a program that has had history in the past, but they've been kind of desperate to sort of regain that, status toward the top of college football. And I think they're hoping that Deion Sanders is their savior.
Here's the other question. Who wins, Colorado or Nebraska on Saturday? Who wins that game? I mean, Matt Rule's kind of in some hot soup right now, early, if you ask me.
I got to be honest with you. I haven't watched any tape of Nebraska this season so far, but, I got to say Colorado impressed me a lot last week, so...
Yeah. And the good thing about
Like
it,
I
so
said.
the Fox Network has got those guys now. I know CBS has had the SEC package for so long, all the big SEC teams like Alabama and Georgia, but now with Fox having Colorado and Deion, I mean, that's putting those guys out there. They've got a good pick up there.
Yeah, I guess, the SEC games are usually on a different network. I feel like Fox gets a lot of Big 12, Big 10 matchups, that noon kickoff. And you got to love the enthusiasm from Gus Johnson, and Joe Klatt does a pretty good job with his, analysis.
With you doing a good job, as always, News and Record, how do they get in touch with you, and where are you going to be coming up again? Remind us tomorrow where you'll be for your ball game, and how do we reach at the News and Record to get some information to you, try to contact you?
All right. So I will be at Western Alamance at Eastern Guilford. This week we'll also have a crew out at Oak Grove and North Forsyth. In terms of contacting, my Twitter page, Roche Sports, my email, bryant.roche@greensboro.com. And thank you as always, Andy.
Always good to have you in. Plus, I know you do respond, because I went to the X, went to the Twitter, you sent you a message, and you will get back to the people. So be aware, he's going to talk to you. He'll talk to you for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Durham, as always.
See you again, hopefully maybe next week if all
Thank you.
things are good.
Thank you, sir.
And good luck tomorrow night. We'll see you.